Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another Conversations with Marty Ross MD here tonight. We're in a pre-holiday space, as many of you know. So we'll see what the turnout's going to be like tonight. I know we had a number of people sign up, but so far it looks like a low attendance, which is typical in December. So some of you may even get a chance to write more than one question to me that I actually take. For those of you that are new to the webinars, welcome here. To those of you that are coming back again, and I see a number of familiar faces here tonight. For those of you that are coming back, welcome back again too. The way that the webinars work, you get to create them with your questions, and I'll respond as best as I can. The way that present your questions to me is there is a chat box down at the bottom of the screen on the right-hand side. Go ahead and write your question in the chat box, and I will do my best to get to them. Often I'm only able to get to one question per person, and sometimes I can't even get to one per person. So generally, I will take one question from a person, and at the end, if it looks like we have space to take more than one per person, I'll go ahead and do that. I am making a recording of the webinar tonight, and that's my dog Thor sitting behind us there, everyone. That's Thor. You may see him hop around here tonight, and if he becomes too distracting, I'll probably move him from the chair back there, but he probably won't hang out there too long. And there's another one I have with me today too called Halo, and you may hear her bounce around as well too. They're Basenjis, if you're wondering what kind of a dog looks like that. He's my Basenji boy. And so you'll probably hear movement or see them flashing around here a little bit during the course of the webinar tonight as well too. So I am doing a recording of the webinar. Tomorrow morning you will get an email from me saying that the recording is ready with a link to where you can find that. If for some reason you don't get that link, the way you can find it is to go to our www.treatlyme.net site. Click on the webinars tab over on the left-hand side. And when you go to the webinars page, that is where you can actually sign up for the next webinar. I'd be glad to have you here again next week. And also you can, there's a recordings tab on that page as well too that you can use to access the recording, okay? So with no further ado, let's go ahead and get started here. And here we go. This question is from Brenda. Hello, Brenda. Let's see. You're welcome for the webinars, by the way. Let's see. I have Lyme and Bartonella. I had a massage recently, and the therapist went deep. The next day, I had severe muscle pain and a big flare in neurologic symptoms that have lasted for a little over a week. Is this typical reaction? How would you treat it? So yeah, it's you have to be careful with deep tissue massage in Lyme disease. It is my experience that if it is done too aggressively, especially earlier in treatment or when you're still having a lot of symptoms of your illness, that it can actually make things worse for a while. I don't know the actual mechanism for why that happens. Other than what I do believe happens is it triggers an increase in inflammation chemicals in the body called cytokines, okay? And so when somebody gets a flare-up like this, I like to work to lower those cytokines. And my favorite supplement to do that with, because there aren't good prescriptions medicines that do it, is to be on curcumin. Curcumin is a component of turmeric. I like using it as a product made by a company called Thorne called Mariva 500, and that's one pill 3 times a day. I prefer the Thorne product because it's a liposomal product, meaning that the curcumin is microscopically wrapped in fat to help increase its absorption. It's 500 milligrams 3 times a day, and if you're really having a severe reaction, I'd even go up to 2 pills 3 times a day. The other thing you might benefit from, Brenda, when this happens, because it would be to try some magnesium as well. 300 to 600 milligrams at bedtime can sometimes help relieve some of the increased pain that has happened from this, okay? But it's not uncommon to have this happen. All right? All right. Good luck to you, Brenda. Thank you for that question, too. And let's see here. Hello, Lynn. Hello, hello back at you from Western Seattle, or actually Western Washington here in Seattle. Good to have you here, Lynn. Thank you. Hello, Pat. Let's see. Hi, doctor. I was listening to a podcast of doctors Klinghart and Mercola. They made sense and were into natural meds, but they seem to put down antibiotics. What are your thoughts on their ideas? Okay, so first of all, I have mixed feelings about Dr. Mercola. I think Dr. Mercola has done a great job of being a proponent for natural ways of managing illnesses. But Dr. Mercola doesn't understand Lyme disease, and he has never treated somebody with Lyme disease to know the realities and the ins and outs of managing this complex illness. The ideas that he may post on his websites are usually those of others. And because Dr. Mercola tends to be somebody that his biases are against prescription medicines in any forms, he will feature people that tend to, go that kind of way with him, okay? Now, Dr. Klinghart, I have a lot of respect for Dr. Klinghart. Dietrich Klinghart, for everyone who wonders who I'm talking about, Dietrich practices out here in the Seattle area as well. Dietrich, I like to say, is crazy. I think he's crazy, brilliant, and he's crazy. There are some ideas that Dietrich has that have really pioneered treatment and the kind of treatments that I do, and there are some ideas that Dietrich has that are just way out there, and I don't think that they're necessarily good ideas. Regarding antibiotics, though, I do agree. I mean, I think if we could treat this illness without using antibiotics, that would be great. But the reality is, for most people, that doesn't work. And in fact, even with Dr. Klinghart's protocols, many of his patients he will wind up putting on antibiotics. And so even though Dr. Mercola would feature aspects of his treatment that are non-antibiotic related, and yes, Dr. Klinghart would agree to try to do that as best as you can, the reality is, for many with Lyme, you're going to have to do antibiotics, whether they are herbal or prescriptive. Yes, I think when possible, it's good to use the herbs. And in the case of Lyme, we actually fortunately do have two herbs that will work about 85 to 90% of the time. Those are Atoba bark extract and cat's claw, sold as products named Banderol and Cemento. I find those to work fairly well, about 85 to 90% of the time. When it comes to Bartonella, the Banderol Cemento, Otoba bark extract, cat's claw mixture that I was just talking about, again, 85 to 90% of the time it works. And I think that is, if you can do it, if you can afford it, and if you don't need to be on prescription antibiotics, that's a reasonable option. Prescriptions for the Lyme germ will work about 85 to 90% of the time too. And then there are other herbs that some people use to treat Lyme, like teasel root and Sida acuta. Just blanking. Kumanda would be one. Neem would be another one. Those herbs, they work maybe about 50 to 60, but maybe about 50% of the time. I just don't find them to be that universally successful, and so I usually don't use those. When it comes to treating Babesia, the prescription work, which is one of the Lyme co-infections, the prescriptions will work about 80 to 85% of the time. The herbs, which are artemisinin and cryptolepis, those will work maybe about 75 to 80% of the time. So again, your prescriptions give you a better option. When it comes to Bartonella, I think by far and away the better way of going is with prescription antibiotics. There are herbs you can use for Bart, and I even write about them. It's basically ones recommended by Buhner, as in Buhner herbs, and that is to use a combination of Hatunia and Sida acuta. Those work about maybe 70, 75, well, maybe about 70% of the time. And that compares to prescriptions that I think work best in that situation about 80 to 85% of the time, okay? So yeah, I think it'd be great if we could go without antibiotics. I'm a big believer in that. But I find in my practice that it's usually you're not able to. And the reality is that you do need to use them. And even Dr. Klinghart does that in his practice. And Dr. Mercola doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to Lyme disease because he hasn't had to manage a person with this illness and work through the complexities of it. I think he's a good guy with the kind of ideas that he's trying to put out in a lot of ways, but I think he's very much sided in one direction that isn't useful when it comes to treating this complex illness. So those are my opinions there. Let me just do a quick screen share here. I want to show I just mentioned that there are ways to manage the infections, including herbs and prescriptions. If you're looking for where you can find resources on that, this is our Lyme disease information site. The major aspect of the site is the Treat Lyme book, okay? And so you can use the Treat Lyme book to find about anything that I might recommend to treat Lyme disease. I've loaded into the Treat Lyme book. There's still things I need to add, and I've kind of paused here at the end of the summer, but probably here in, the end of summer into the fall, I've paused, but I'm getting ready to start putting some articles back out again. So anyhow, take a look here. In terms of how do you treat the various infections, what do I think is best? Take a look at our chapter called the Infection Treatment Plans. And there is an article called Kills Bartonella, which I did update recently to include herbal options that I was just mentioning to you, okay? There is an article here on Lyme called Kills Lyme Germs, a brief antibiotic guide, all right? And then here's the one on Babesia called Kills Babesia, a brief guide as well too, okay? And these are pretty easy to understand. Just read through them. You'll see the approaches I recommend. Some of them are ones you could do by yourself. Some of them you do need prescription medicines to help you with those, okay? And these are all part of what is known as the Treat Lyme book, okay? All right, let me go back here again. So one thing about I like Dietrich. Dietrich and I run into each other publicly and talk often, okay? So my comments about him being crazy, I say with some fondness. I think some of the ideas he has are just brilliant, but some of them I do think are a little bit far out. So anyhow, there you are. So let me go ahead and move on here. So thank you for that question, Nina. All right, let's see here. Excuse me, everyone. I'm getting rung here for some reason. I don't know what that would be about. All right. Hello, Lisa. Let's see. Help with severe movement issues. My daughter is getting worse by the day with nonstop twitching, shaking, chorea-like movements, thoughts on Lyme, Bart, Babs, and effect on the basal ganglia, and how to calm her. Thanks very much. All right. So random limb movements and kind of shakes and tremors and twitching. I think of neuro-Lyme, meaning Lyme in the brain, okay, Lyme germs in the brain. But I also think of Bartonella as part of that, all right? Now, I would need to ask you a lot more questions but to figure that out for sure. But I do think that there's a great possibility. So I hope that she's being treated for Bartonella, and I hope that she's being treated for Lyme. But you also, when you get this kind of neurologic syndrome, it often is a sign that there is impairment or decreased function of what are known as mitochondria, energy factories that are found in every one of our cells. But in particular, when they get injured and don't produce enough energy for your nerve cells, can result in situations like this too. So there's some things that I would recommend that she does to help support the mitochondria, to help start repairing them, okay? And then the other thing I'm going to recommend are some herbs that just help calm an agitated nervous system on top of repairing the mitochondria, all right? So let's talk about mitochondria here. So every one of our cells has energy factories in them called mitochondria. And by some estimates, there's 300 to 400 per cell. They generate a type of cell fuel called ATP. And that cell fuel is created from a bunch of chemical reactions that burn sugar and fat into cell fuel ATP, all right? Now, when you have, there's a variety of things that are needed for that mitochondria to work well. Number one, mitochondria need to have a healthy covering. And their covering is made up of a layer of phospholipid fats. And the two predominant ones are something called phosphatidylserine and phosphatidylcholine. When you have a chronic infectious situation, there is an overproduction of oxidizing agents in the body. And those oxidizing agents damage membranes, including our cell membranes, which are also phospholipids, but also the membranes of the mitochondria. And if the mitochondria membranes get damaged, it creates a couple problems. Number one, it's difficult for fat and sugar to get into the inside of the mitochondria to be burned into cell fuel. Secondly, a lot of the chemical reactions that create the cell fuel ATP require electrons to be given to them from a healthy covering. And if that covering is damaged, you don't get adequate electrons transfer. And if the nerve cells don't have adequate energy, they can't heal and they get dysfunctional, okay? The other thing that can lead to the dysfunction of the mitochondria is the mitochondria can deplete their glutathione supply. So glutathione is the restorative, reparative antioxidant that is found in every one of our cells. And it's also used in the mitochondria to help correct functioning there too, all right? And then finally, often people with mitochondria injury need a nutrient called coenzyme Q10. Now, I want to say something loudly right now about coenzyme Q10. Do not take it if you're treating Babesia with either Mepron or Malarone. The coenzyme Q10 will interfere with the correct functioning of Mepron and Malarone. So don't use coenzyme Q10. Don't follow this recommendation for coenzyme Q10 if you're also treating for Babesia, okay? All right, so what regimen would I recommend to repair the mitochondria? Well, there's a few things. Number one, repair the fat membranes by using a product called NT-Factor Energy. NT-Factor Energy is made by a company called Researched Nutritionals. It is a liposomal variety of those fats that make up the mitochondria. Liposomal means they're fats microscopically wrapped in fat to increase its absorption, okay? And they have a good product. Research Nutritionals makes a good product called the NT-Factor. So it has the fats in it that repair the covering of those mitochondria, all right? In addition, the NT-Factor has in it some nutrients that help the mitochondria work well, right? Now, I want to let you know there's another one that Research Nutritionals makes called ATP Fuel. Do not use it which could be a reasonable substitute for the NT-Factor, except it has coenzyme Q10. So again, don't use ATP Fuel if you're trying to treat Babesia with Malarone or with Mepron, okay? All right, so anyhow, I prefer the NT-Factor though, and I would do it as 2 pills 3 times a day for 2 months, and then after 2 months, decrease it to 1 pill 3 times a day. Okay, so that's rebuilding the covering of your mitochondria and even repairing the nerve cell membrane, because the same fats that make up mitochondria make up the nerve cell membrane as well too. Okay, second thing you want to do is increase glutathione levels, all right? And my favorite way of doing that is to actually take glutathione. But you need to take it as a liposomal variety if you're going to do it orally. And that means it's microscopically wrapped in fat too. And again, I like a Research Nutritionals product called Tri-Fortify Orange. And I would do 5 milliliters of that 1 time a day. Now, there are some people that don't absorb glutathione, all right? And also, when somebody has a significant neurologic decline, I often don't even want to consider if it's going to get absorbed. I sometimes just want to give it in a more solidly sure way that it gets there, which is to either do it as breathing treatments called nebulized glutathione, or to do it as an intravenous infusion glutathione, okay? So the way you do, and I'm going to show you an article in a little bit where this is all written down about how to do glutathione, okay? But the glutathione, either do it as the Tri-Fortify Orange, 5 milliliters 1 time a day, or do it as a nebulized version, which would be mixed up as glutathione 200 milligrams per milliliter, nebulized 2 milliliters 2 times a day, okay? Or, which is a prescription to do that, okay? And it has to be made by a compounding pharmacy, actually. Okay, or see if you can get a naturopath or an integrated medicine doctor, a doctor like me, that could do intravenous glutathione, and that would be 2,500 milligrams 2 times a week, IV, and I would do about 4 treatments to see if it's going to make help with the kind of symptoms that are going on. That's your quick way of getting it. Okay, so NT-Factor, and glutathione, all right? Now, for some reason, I've got a person that really cannot tolerate glutathione in any form, or they can't get the IV, they can't get the nebulized, and they cannot tolerate the Trifortify Orange. Another way to raise glutathione is to take something called N-acetylcysteine, also known as NAC, 500 milligrams 3 times a day. That's a building block for glutathione, and it will help create more glutathione within your mitochondria, okay? And then finally, I would also be on mitochondrial repair. I would start something called coenzyme Q10. And given the severity of the neurologic problems your daughter's having, I usually dose at about 100 to 200 milligrams. I would consider 400 milligrams 1 time a day. But again, if she's being treated for babesia with Mepron or Malarone, do not take the coenzyme Q10, all right? And then one last thing to think about with mitochondrial repair. There is a protein that is used to carry the fats from the outside to the inside of the mitochondria to be burned into cell fuel, and that's called carnitine, all right? People that don't eat red meat do not get enough carnitine. So if you happen to be a person that doesn't eat red meat, start acetyl L-carnitine, and I like a product made by Thorne called Carnityl. That's Carnityl, 500 milligrams, and you want to take it as 1 pill twice a day for a month, and then 1 pill daily after that, okay? So those are the things I would do to start doing mitochondrial repair, and it takes time. You're talking probably about 2 months, maybe even 3 months before you see big returns from doing this, okay? But that's what this kind of a situation, I would do the investments now. Start doing those things to repair the nerves, okay? The other thing I would consider doing, her nervous system is agitated, and one of the things that can help calm an agitated nervous system is to take lithium orotate, and that's a 5 milligram pill, and that's 1 pill 3 times a day. Lithium is a nutrient, an essential element that is used for correct nerve function, and it's what nerves use to help talk together better. Being on lithium helps improve what is known as nerve signaling, the ability for nerves to talk together, okay? Treat Lyme, treat Bartonella. Second part, repair mitochondria and nerve cell coverings by being on NT factor. Also repair the mitochondria by being on glutathione or N-acetylcysteine. And also, if you're not a red meat eater, be on acetyl L-carnitine, and then also be on coenzyme Q10, okay? All right, and then finally, to just calm the agitated nervous system, try the lithium orotate, 5 milligrams 3 times a day. Oh, one last thing about lithium. This is not psychiatric dosing of lithium, okay? So we use lithium sometimes in bipolar illness or manic depression. And we use it for those conditions. We're talking 600 to 900 milligrams a day. I just talked about using lithium as 15 milligrams a day, okay? So much lower dosing, all right? So let me show you, I've got more resources on what I just said here. I'm gonna do a quick screen share so I can show that to you. All right, so we're back in the Treat Lyme book here. I'm gonna search by using the table of contents. And I'm gonna go to the, where do I wanna go here? Let's go to the Brain and Nerves chapter. Okay, so this is the Brain and Nerves chapter, all right? So here's an article you can read on that lithium orotate that I was just telling you about. Here's an article on glutathione, and in the glutathione article, I do describe here the various things that glutathione can help with, including Herxheimer reactions, nerve and brain repair. It helps repair the liver as well. I talk about the various ways that you can use it. And then here is where I talk about the glutathione nebulizer and the IV glutathione. Okay, so you may want to come back and take a look at that later. The other thing in this chapter, there is a section that I have here on called My Brain Isn't Working, I Think, What Can I Do? Where I talk about a variety of these things that I just said. Oh, one last thing I should mention to you too, that you need to make sure that your daughter is doing, and this is anyone with Lyme should do, is a lot of that nervous system irritation is also being triggered by 2 groups of inflammatory chemicals. One is called cytokines. I mentioned those earlier tonight. And the other are a group of inflammatory chemicals made by cells in the brain. And those are called, and I'm going to blank on it right now, quinolinic acid. So it's a chemical called quinolinic acid, right? You need to lower quinolinic acid. You need to lower the cytokines too. And what works well for that is to be on curcumin, which I mentioned earlier tonight. And that's Mariva 500, one pill 3 times a day on that, okay? All right, now I'm going to do another screen share here quickly. I want to just show you a resource here. All right, so I'm back in the Treat Lyme book. All right, so I've already mentioned a number of supplements here tonight. And so if you're wondering where our patients get the products that we recommend, this is our supplement site, Marty Ross MD, Terrabrook ND supplements. It's at www.treatlyme.com. Any of the supplements I mentioned tonight you can find here. We no longer directly link them to any of the articles in the Treat Lyme book because of FDA regulations on that. But you can find, I'll show you in a second, where you can find just the link through our information website to get here. It's just they're not linked directly to any of the articles, okay? So here's where you can find the various products that I was just mentioning tonight. The reason we carry supplements is we want to make sure that our patients here at the clinic where I treat patients, that they have access to supplements that have the best chance of working, meaning products that the companies we know have done a great job of sourcing the most active ingredients, okay? But the other thing we worry about is that we use companies that don't put artificial fillers in that could be harmful to somebody that has Lyme disease, okay? And so I get concerned about other products, and so we've hand-selected our products to find those that have the least chance of toxicity, and you'll find them all here at Marty Ross MD, Terrabrook ND supplements, all right? All right, now, in the Treat Lyme book, so here I am back here again. As I said, I can no longer link any of the articles directly to the store, but if you're reading our book and you wonder where can you find our stuff, here's the link to our store right here. I'm going over it, okay? Just click on that, and you'll be pulled over to the store, all right? All right, so just thought I would show everyone that. Make sure that when you're using supplements, I do think they're a really beneficial part to have your treatment because the supplements round out, help improve function, fix things in ways that drugs cannot and do not. But you got to make sure you're not throwing your money away on things that don't work. Just because it's cheaper doesn't mean it's going to work, okay? Just because it's cheaper sometimes means it may be more affordable, but that doesn't mean it's the best thing for you. You may still be throwing your money away, all right? So be careful. All right. Thanks for that question, Lisa. All right. Hello, Craig. Let's see. You've indicated that Lyme disease symptoms are a result of high cytokines causing inflammation. All my regular blood tests have come back normal. Is it worth doing a cytokine panel? Are there other specific tests that might be helpful? So in terms of doing cytokine panels, it's really not going to be that helpful. I mean, we know they're elevated. So as a part of having any infection actually in you, cytokines get elevated, and there's a large number of them, okay? So it's not really useful to go ahead and go measuring in terms of, in my opinion, it's not. I just have people do things to lower them, which is, again, my favorite is to be on a curcumin, 500 milligrams 3 times a day is a great way of doing it. Another option is to work with an herb called quercetin if you can't tolerate the curcumin. Another option is to be on glutathione. Another option is to use a brown seaweed extract called FibroBoost, okay? And so you can look into more of those ideas here later. Craig, I'll show you where you can look into all of those ideas here in just a second. But so anyhow, to answer your question, no, I don't think it's worth doing it. And then in terms of other specific tests, I would need to know more exactly what you're looking for here, okay? So I don't have enough information to be able to respond to that question, all right? So where do you find an article about what do you do for cytokines? Well, let me go ahead and do a screen share on that one. All right, so I'm going back to the table of contents here. And where you can look up cytokines. So there's this chapter we have called Herxheimer reaction and cytokines, all right? And what I would do is, in terms of figuring out what to do about cytokines, read this article called Herxheimer die-off reaction, inflammation run amok. This happens to be one of the free articles that we have where you don't have to subscribe to the Treat Lyme book, okay? And so you can read through, you're going to see the various ideas. that I've come up with for lowering cytokines. Okay. All right. Let me go back here. All right. Thank you, Craig. Thank you for that question. And good luck to you. All right, let's see here. I think we've got a question that's going to be divided into two parts here, everyone. So we'll see if I can track all parts of it, though. All right. So let me go back here. So this is a question from Jackie. Let's see. I've had Lyme, Babesia, and Bartonella for 23 years. I was diagnosed a while back, but I have put off treatment because I'm afraid of feeling worse during herxing. I have so much to take care of first in case I become sicker. I'm going to start treatment January 1. How can I fight severe fatigue? And again, I said, I think there's a second part here. I think there it is. Already taking lithium orotate 2 to 3 times a day. It does help. But what else can I do so I can have energy before and during treatment? Also, what are their names again for the natural antibiotics and at what dose? You are always so helpful. I'm very grateful. Jackie, you're welcome. And so let me just mention, I did mention the 2 natural antibiotics, I think is what you're talking about for the Lyme germ. That would be Banderol. That would be Otoba bark extract, which Nutrimedic sells as a product called Banderol, and cat's claw, okay? And you can find articles about or I actually do recommend, I tell you how to use both of those herbs in the Successful Treatment Recipe, which is our free Lyme disease guideline. I think you probably have seen that. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, in a little bit here, I'll show you where you can find our free treatment guideline and our main information site. Okay, so Jackie, just follow the instructions that I have on that and the Successful Treatment Recipe about how to use your Banderol Cemento for the Lyme germ. Okay, and again, for the herb options for Babesia or Bartonella, if you should have those, earlier tonight I did show you the articles that you can look at for those. Look in the infection treatment plan chapter in the Treat Lyme book. Look at the article called Kills Bartonella, a brief guide, and the article called Kills Babesia, a brief guide, that does discuss the herb options that you would have to treat those 2 co-infections as well too. Okay, all right. Now go back to energy. So for energy, there's a lot of facets that help that are related to energy, Jackie. And I think probably the easiest way to look at that, you know what I'm going to do to explain energy? I'm actually going to go ahead and look at our treatment guideline, because the steps that we built into the Lyme disease treatment guideline are things you can use for energy. All right, so let me do a screen share here. Oh, I'm back on the main information. Down here to the Lyme guidelines tab, okay? And this is the Successful Treatment Recipe that I wrote a number of years ago that gives you the things that you should do that are essential in any Lyme disease treatment. And this is regardless of where you are in the treatment. These are the essential steps. This is what works to help you feel better and also to help lower those cytokines that I keep talking about tonight, okay? All right, so number 1, to get better energy and to lower cytokines, get sleep, okay? That's one of the better ways of getting energy. Now, many of you may say, well, I don't feel better even if I get sleep. Well, that's true, but you're laying the foundation, okay? And so here within the Successful Treatment Recipe, I give you some ideas that I have found helpful. There's prescription options, and there's also some herbal options. So take a look here at these ideas, okay? All right, number 2, for energy, you gotta lower cytokines, okay? Remember, I've said, many of you know, my mantra from webinar to webinar is Lyme disease is a syndrome where the immune system overproduces inflammation chemicals called cytokines. And on the one hand, cytokines are good. I tell you all about that here. They're good because they basically help the immune system work better when they're at the right amount, okay? But in Lyme disease, the immune system does a horrible job getting rid of Lyme. And eventually we make too many cytokines, and too many cytokines give you all of the Lyme disease symptoms, okay? So too many cytokines make it so you can't think. They disturb the sleep centers. They interfere with how your hormone systems work. They give you fatigue. They can cause muscle wasting. They give you difficulty thinking. Most Lyme disease symptoms are actually excess cytokine symptoms, all right? and they cause low energy. So lower your cytokines. 500 milligrams, 1 pill 3 times a day is a way to help with energy. All right. All right. Number 3, be on something that helps your body deal with stress. And that's to do ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is an Ayurvedic East Indian herb that has been used for centuries in Chinese medicine and in Ayurvedic medicine to lower or to improve the adrenal gland function and also thyroid function, okay? And it's been observed in these cultures for thousands of years to get better energy. You would do it as 2 pills in the morning and 2 pills between 1 and 2, all right? The other thing you could do on your own is make sure you're on a good multivitamin. And the one I prefer is something called the Energy Infusion, 1 scoop 1 times a day, okay? So those are just some basic things that you could do to get more energy. And then finally, there's one last thing that you might want to take a look at, and that is to use the product I mentioned earlier tonight called NT Factor. That's the one I told people to use to fix the mitochondria covering, right? Remember? That was on the question I had about the brain nerve dysfunction and tremors and shakes, okay? But that NT Factor, there's one study done looking at it that shows that by using it for 2 months, there are average energy improvements of 40%, okay? Now the studies were done on people that reported fatigue. It wasn't done targeting people with Lyme disease, but in a population of people that reported fatigue, by using the NT Factor for 2 months, there were average energy improvements of 40%. And in addition, people reported, quote unquote, clearer thinking, okay? So it helps with your thinking as well too, all right? And so that might be something else to consider adding as well, Jackie, okay? All right, good luck to you. Thank you for that question. Bear with me here as I get that cleaned out. All right, let me look at one thing here. Well, you know, I thought we might have a lower turnout tonight, but we haven't. We actually have a good-sized turnout tonight. And so it's good to see everyone here. So I don't know if we're going to be able to take more than 2 questions per person tonight, but we'll keep working through these as best as I can, okay? All right. Okay, let's see here. Next question. Phyllis says, hello, Dr. Ross. Hello, Phyllis. Thank you for that. All right. Hello, Lori. Let's see. My fingers are red, swollen, and very painful. Is this normal type of Lyme disease symptom? What co-infection might be causing this? There are no rheumatologic issues going on, by the way. Do you happen to have any ideas? Thanks. So yes, Lyme can give swollen and painful digits, especially around the joints, okay? So yes, this is common. And yes, Lyme can cause it. The big thing you want to do is lower cytokines, okay? You're going to keep hearing, evidently that's my theme tonight, is lower cytokines, because it really does make a difference, all right? So Lori, I'd probably try out the curcumin I've mentioned. And given the severity of what you're describing here, you might even want to dose it all the way up to 1,000 milligrams 3 times a day. In terms of co-infections and joint pain, Bartonella can give joint pain. Babesia can give joint pain. And so, yeah, those could be part of this as well, too. Okay? All right. Thank you for that question. All right, let's see. Hold on here a minute. I just got to get a sip of water. All right, let's see here. This is from Nina. Hi, Nina. Any ideas why I seem to do really well initially on different protocols, only herbal at the moment, and then crash, usually within 2 to 3 months? So Nina, I don't, without knowing your situation specifically, it would be hard to comment exactly what's happening in your situation, okay? But it's just some general ideas that I think of when somebody does get crashing like this. One is that it is possible with treatment, as we're using even herbal antimicrobials or prescription antimicrobials, that you can develop too many yeast in your intestines. Too many yeast trigger too many cytokines, all right? So it's my cytokine theme night again tonight, all right? And yeah, there's some people, even when you do good work at trying to prevent yeast, you can get them resurging, regrowing about every 2 to 3 months. So some of it might be from that. The other is that for some reason, I do see that there are certain people that their Lyme infection rapidly cycles in terms of its resistance that it develops in of the antimicrobials, whether it's herbal or prescription antimicrobials, okay? So there are some people that we just have to flip the antibiotics around. We have to change your regimens on a regular basis. The other thing I would worry about that could be causing you to go down like this is buildup of toxins, okay? So it may be that you need to do some better detox work to keep the toxins out that keep building up in you as well too, all right? So for ideas that I have about detoxing, just to show you that quickly, actually do they? I do a screen share here. So again, when somebody gets worse regularly, I always think, have yeast moved in? Think, do we have a detox issue? Okay. So for information about that, I would take a look at our table of contents in the Treat Lyme book. There is a chapter we have on detoxification. And what I would do is take a look at the article I wrote called Lyme Detoxification 101, the basics, okay? Just make sure you're doing a lot of these standard steps in here, all right? The other chapter I would take a look at is the chapter on yeast. All right, and I would take a look at the one that says, do I have yeast, which is a silent problem. Do you have yeast? I talk in here about the problem of yeast and the difficulties with diagnosing it and why you need to pretty much go by what your symptoms tell you, okay? And I talk about the symptoms too. All right, and then this article called Kills Yeast, a Brief Guide gives you ideas on what you can do to get the yeast out and to keep yeast under control, okay? All right, now I just realized, so one thing I want to let everyone know, this article that I have here about lufeneron, which is called an experimental yeast treatment. The source, the European source of lufeneron is no longer available, okay? However, there is a new source, and I need to get it added here. But let me tell you what it is, because there it is. All right, so the new source that is not in this article is through a Canadian site called candidacapsules.com. So that's CANDIDA capsules, CAPSULES.com. Okay? All right, there you go. Let me go back here. All right, Nina, thank you for that question. All right. Let's see here. Hello, Noel. I'm 80% recovered from a bout of Lyme, doing okay, but I got another tick bite 5 days ago, only attached for 1 or 2 hours. Bite area is almost completely healed with no redness. Wondering if I should treat prophylactically and how long or wait. Used herbs initially, thank you. So, Noel, my feeling on getting tick bites again is that the risks are too great of injury if that tick happened to have Lyme. I went horse around. We already know if you've got Lyme disease, and even though it's been treated before, the fact that you got sick from Lyme disease indicates that your immune system has a harder time dealing with it, okay? I don't think that everyone gets Lyme infection actually gets Lyme disease. I think there's many people out there whose immune systems can do a really good job keeping the Lyme infection under control. But if you have an immune system that didn't do that, we already know your immune system has a harder time, okay? So I went horse around. I would do either an antibiotic treatment, 3 weeks of probably doxycycline, because the doxycycline will pick up Lyme. It'll also pick up Bartonella and Babesia acutely. Okay, so you pick up those co-infections. I would do it as 200 milligrams twice a day for 3 weeks, or at a minimum, get on some Banderol Cemento. I don't think they work quite as well, though, in these situations as what the prescription antibiotics would do. The Banderol Cemento, I would work rapidly up to 30 drops twice a day, okay? And I would do it at least for 3 weeks as well, too, okay? But I wouldn't take a chance on this. All right. Thank you for that question. Good luck to you. All right, let's see here. Sake, hi, welcome back here again. Let's see, can you please explain Lyme neck? Well, I'm not sure what you mean by Lyme neck, but let me tell you what I think you mean. So in Lyme disease, people have symptoms in their neck, okay? And they usually are two. One is neck pain, all right? And the other one is a lot of cracking and popping in the joints, okay? So those are symptoms that we see that are common. Now, the neck pain can be either from muscles being inflamed from having Lyme, or they can be and causing the muscles going into spasm, okay? Or sometimes the nerves in the neck that come out of very small openings in the bones, those nerves get inflamed from Lyme, they swell into the small openings, and then they start getting squeezed, all right? So you get nerve pain from that. So for the neck pain portion of things, number one, always be on curcumin. Okay, get inflammation down. Get inflammation down of the nerves if they're being squeezed, okay? Get the cytokine inflammation down that may be causing those muscles to go into spasm. And again, that's curcumin, 500 milligrams 3 times a day, all right? And then also you might want to try magnesium, anywhere from 400 to 600 milligrams at nighttime. My preference for a magnesium source is to use a form of magnesium, a salt form of magnesium called magnesium malate. Okay, there's also magnesium citrate, magnesium sulfate, but the salt form called magnesium malate, I think, is better and more useful when it comes to muscle spasm, muscle pain. Okay, so I take a look at that as well too. All right, Thanks for that question. And I think I may have got your name pronounced right tonight based on the pronunciation that you sent me. Thank you for doing so when I asked for that the last time. All right. Good luck to you. All right, let's see here. Well, there we are. Let's see. Hi, Susie. Let's see. Well, it's not staying posted. Let me try to see what's going on there. There we are. Well, IV antibiotics work for very late stage diagnosis of Lyme disease. The answer is yes. Oral antibiotics will work for late stage Lyme as well too, all right? So it doesn't matter, in my experience, when somebody's got Lyme, yes, there's probably a better chance that antibiotics are going to work, whether they're IV or oral, the earlier you get treated, okay? However, antibiotics are going to work anytime. And when I look at across the board, what my experience is that IV antibiotics work about 90-95% of the time. Prescription antibiotics work about 85 to 90% of the time, so about 5% less. I rarely start a person on IV antibiotics, and it's kind of a difference in the schools of thinking. So here in the United States, there is what I call the East Coast school and then the West Coast school, okay? And as many of you know, I'm based out of Seattle, Washington, here on the left coast of the United States. And on the West Coast here, we tend to go more with oral antibiotics. That just tends to be what we do. No one's done head-to-head studies to say, do our people do better out here than those on the East Coast? But of course I think they do. I'm from the West Coast. But I usually don't use the IV because I think they carry risk. And the big risk is 15% of the time, you're going to get an infection in your bloodstream, or you're going to develop a blood clot at the tip of your IV line that can break off and float into the lungs, okay? So I prefer not to do IV antibiotics unless I need to. And when do I need to? Well, I need to when I've got somebody that's got really rapid neurologic decline. I might consider doing that. I might consider doing IV antibiotics right up front when somebody's got heart block. The electrical system of the heart has been injured or damaged from having Lyme, okay? I will think of IV antibiotics if I'm about 6 to 9 months into an oral regimen and I'm getting nowhere. Then I might start thinking about doing it. And I will always think of IV antibiotics as an initial or near initial. Somebody's got multiple sclerosis Lyme or Parkinson's Lyme, because we just really need to do a good job making sure we get things into the brain, okay? All right. So those are my thoughts on the IV antibiotics, all right? All right. Good luck to you. All right, this is a question from Jane. Hi, Jane. Is ozone therapy effective against tick infections? Thank you, Dr. Ross, for your webinars. They're very helpful. Jane, you're welcome, by the way. So I actually put out an article about a month ago, I think, on what are called oxidative medicine treatments. I'll show you that article here in a minute. So ozone and hydrogen peroxide and ultraviolet irradiation of the blood and high-dose vitamin C, like 50 grams IV of vitamin C. Those are ways of doing what are known as oxidative medicine, okay? So oxidation, those agents are oxidative agents. Oxidative agents damage cell membranes and they damage germ membranes, all right? And that's how they kill. So they can kill germs. My concern is when they're used repeatedly in Lyme, they may cause long-term damage to our own cells, all right? And as many of you heard tonight in Lyme, is you can get injury to your energy factories called mitochondria because of oxidative damage. And so if you're using a treatment to kill the germs that also give you oxidative damage, you may cause mitochondria injury as well too. On the whole, I am not a fan of oxidative medicine treatments, all right? The reason is I don't think they work that well. I think that my experience is I think they help about 40% of the time. And my bigger concern is that they have to be used repeatedly long-term, and they do because 4 or 5 treatments is not going to get rid of your Lyme germ. It just doesn't work that way. You're going to wind up getting into cell injury down the road, okay? All right? So, and also mitochondria injury as well too. So I'm not a big fan of oxidative treatments. Now, I will recommend them at times when everything else isn't working, when a person is going nowhere, and the risk of doing them then gets outweighed by the risk of not having anything else help you, okay? So let me just do a quick screen share here so you can see the article that I have written and recorded about that, actually, all right? Here. Okay, so I'm in the Treat Lyme book again. And I think it's going to be under the, let's look under the anti-germs here. Yeah, there it is. So it's in the anti-germs chapter. It's called On Hydrogen Peroxide, Ozone, and High-Dose Vitamin C, okay? And if you see, I've got the big warning sign right there, okay? So this is an article that I would use with caution. And there's a whole video I recorded from a number of webinars ago about that, okay? So it talks about the ins and outs of it, all right? Now, I got to tell you, it is interesting. When I did write that article about a month ago, I did post it on Facebook. And it's really interesting when I post things on Facebook. I'm always interested in the responses I get. There are a number of ardent supporters of doing hydrogen peroxide, okay? And they were kind of aghast that I would put such an opinion up, okay? But again, I make my comments based on what I see on average. And I also make my comments based on risk, okay? And yeah, I do think any treatment can help anyone, okay? So yeah, rosemary oil, for instance, has probably helped some people get over their Lyme disease. But on the whole, I don't think rosemary oil helps most people, and I don't advocate it. And yes, hydrogen peroxide IV probably has helped a number of people with their Lyme disease. But on the whole, for the average person, I don't think it's helpful, and I think it carries great risk, okay? So I'll just make those as observations as well. All right? Jane, thank you for your question. All right, let's see here, working our way through. All right, hello, Rita. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Is it safe to use N-acetylcysteine, which is NAC, everyone, 600 milligrams twice a day to increase glutathione? Yes, it is. In fact, one of the things I mentioned earlier tonight in terms of helping your mitochondria work better, getting more glutathione helps with that. And one way to raise glutathione if you cannot take glutathione is to do N-acetylcysteine. And I usually recommend 500 milligrams 3 times a day. 600 milligrams twice a day is fine too. Okay, so N-acetylcysteine is a building block for glutathione. All right? All right. Thank you for that question, Rita. All right, let's see if I can get that question to post. There it is. All right. Let's see. Hello, Marty. Hi, Ellen. I have been tested positive for Lyme and have been on Doxy 100 milligrams twice a day since November 20th. I'm supposed to complete a 3-week cycle. I think we have caught this early, as in less than 6 months from infection. I'm responding well. Should I stay in Doxy longer than 21 days? Yes, 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 yes. I'll say it again, yes. And the reason I'm saying it so emphatically is, Ellen, if you did catch this early, you want to wipe it out, okay? And there is no test that we have that shows that you have wiped it out. My experience says the best way to know that you have wiped it out, or the best odds you have that you have wiped it out, is to be symptom-free for at least 2 months before you stop your antibiotics, okay? And that is, so my rules of thumb about antibiotics is, if you get Lyme acutely, you have a tick attached, and you know it was attached, you saw it, you saw so that it was there, and you got sick right afterwards. If you use your antibiotics for 3 weeks, I think you eradicate it all the time. If, however, you start treating your Lyme and it is over a month after the original tick bite, a general rule of thumb I find, this is an average, a general rule of thumb, is that you should treat for at least 2 months for each month after the bite. And treat until you are symptom-free for at least 2 months, okay? It just gives you a general idea of how long it's gonna be. So if you didn't get started treating on this until 6 months, I think you said, from the infection, I would anticipate about a year of treatment. Yeah, yes, a year of treatment, okay? So there's numerous animal and human studies that show that Lyme on that standard 3 to 4 week treatment of antibiotics that many doctors give, all right? But boy, you're setting yourself up. If you stop at this point, you are setting yourself up for a relapse down the road, okay? So I would treat longer. The other thing I would do is, I don't think using Doxy is enough at this point. Doxy treats intracellular Lyme, Doxy treats spirochete Lyme, but doxycycline does not treat the microscopic cyst form of the Lyme germ, okay? And you need to cover for that as well too. And at a minimum, I would add in some grapefruit seed extract as a 100 milligram pill, 250 milligram pill, 1 pill twice a day to pick up the cyst form of your Lyme germ, okay? And Ellen, if you need more help, one thing you might want to consider, if you're not able to convince your doctors to go longer, and that may be the problem, you may have a hard time convincing your doctors to go beyond the standard 3 weeks that most doctors do. One thing you might want to consider, and I'm just going to do a screen share to show you, is Lyme site here, okay? Down here on the bottom, on the left-hand side, I've got this online consult link here. All right, I run a service called a one-to-one medical consult service where you can visit with me online, where I can review everything with you. I can do a medical visit. The only thing I can't do at the end of it is write prescriptions or order tests, but I can develop a whole treatment plan for you that you can then give to your doctor to see if they'll implement it, okay? And if for some reason they won't, the only thing you need to do then, not only, but if you would fly out here to see me in Seattle, Washington, I see people from all across the world, all across the country, fly out for a one-time visit, for a half-hour visit, for one time, and then I can become your prescriber wherever you live, okay? So, yeah, I hope that gives you some ideas on what you might look at doing, okay? All right. So let me go back here. All right, Alan, thank you for that question. All right, let's see here. I can get that to go away. For some reason, there we go. Bear with me here. I don't know what's happening tonight. The webinar menu that I use isn't responding the way it's supposed to. All right, this is a quick one from Josephine. Okay. Hi, Josephine. Let's see. Do herbs like Cemento and Banderol kill our good bacteria the way antibiotics do? So any antimicrobial, I don't care whether it's prescriptive or whether it's herbal, is going to kill bacteria in your gut as well too. However, the prescription antibiotics do it to a greater degree than what like a Banderol Cemento does, okay? Or rosemary oil, or thyme oil, or Sida acuta, or Kumanda. All right. So the herbs tend not to do it to as great of a degree. When I first started working with the Banderol Cemento, I was using it also often in people that were having repeat yeast infections. And although I found that they would tend to get those repeat yeast infections less often than they might have before we started the Banderol Cemento, I still found that they got them quite often. Okay, so it's a decreased chance, but you still need to do a good job of preventing yeast. All right, thank you for that question, Josephine. All right, let's see here. Hello, Lynn. Let's see. My LLMD is wanting to try to use ART or Autonomic on me. Have you ever heard of this? If so, could you tell me about it? Thank you. All right, so ART stands for Autonomic Response Testing, not therapy, but Autonomic Response Testing, okay? And it's a skill or a technique that was developed by Dietrich Klinghardt. Many of you heard me talk about him tonight earlier. Dietrich, in terms of how he designs his treatments, uses a type of kinesiology, actually, called autonomic response testing. And what's done is he is measuring for responses that happen when he introduces into an energy field substances that he might want to try with a person. Okay, it's a form of kinesiology. Now, what I have found is Dietrich does a great job with it. Okay, and there are some people that Dietrich has trained or have learned the technique that also can do it well, but testing is an art, and I don't think all people have it down. So although your practitioner may try it, I hope your practitioner does a good job of it. I know a number of people that can do it well. The best one I still think is Dietrich. But your tester, it all depends on how good of a tester is to whether ART is going to be useful at helping your physician find ways to do your care. I do get concerned by physicians that rely on ART alone. I think it is one source of input, just like your symptoms give me ideas, just like testing gives me ideas, just like your own intuitive sense gives you ideas, just like my intuitive sense gives me ideas about what I want to use with patients. ART is just one other input, and I don't think we should use it exclusively. I think we have to think through our treatment still. Okay? All right. Thanks, Lynn. And good luck to you. Hello, Craig. Let's see. I have had Lyme and co-infections of Bartonella and Babesia for 2 years and am not getting better. I've been experiencing on and off cycling fatigue, so I did blood tests for HHV6 and which both came back positive. Does a positive HHV6 PCR indicate an active infection? The answer is yes. So HHV6, that's a good question. Let me answer that a different way, actually. So everyone, PCR stands for polymerase chain reaction, which is a way of amplifying the DNA. It's a technique to amplify the DNA of a germ when we find it in your blood so that we can see it better, okay? So for instance, we can do PCR testing for HIV, which is a way to see, can we amplify the genetics, the genes, the DNA material of that germ so we can measure it easier, all right? And so the PCR, if you're finding, if the PCR for HHV6 is positive, it means that they're seeing the DNA of that virus living in you, all right? Now, here's what the dilemma is. So HHV6 happens to be a virus that is a common respiratory virus that we pick up just by living in the world. And if you were to pull 100 healthy people off the street, we could find evidence in those people of having, and about 10% of those people, we would find evidence of having either antibodies, not PCR, but antibodies against HHV6, parvovirus B19, something called cytomegalovirus, and the Epstein-Barr virus, the monovirus. Okay, so and what that suggests to me and many of us is that many of us have viruses living in us and we just keep them under control. They're not causing a problem, okay? So what I don't know from studies is when your HHV6 is under control, are we still able to measure PCR? I don't know that, okay? The fact that you're measuring PCR doesn't mean it's active in you. I don't know, it just means it's measuring it, but many of us can cohabitate with our germ, all right? So what I'm relying on more and more these days is to see if I have problems from chronic active viruses being actually really active, is I like measuring a blood test called anagalase. So anagalase is an enzyme that is found in the covering of enzymes. I'm sorry, in the covering of viruses. It's also found in cancer cells too. And if nagalase comes back elevated, it can indicate that viruses that are living in you are no longer being kept under control by the immune system, and they may be contributing to your illness, all right? Now, the nagalase gets reported, and normal is up to a range of 0.9. I usually don't find benefit in treating for levels that are below 1.8. I usually don't treat until I get somebody that has levels above 1.8 or higher. And it's in those situations that I find benefit for treating chronic virus infections. And there's a variety of ways you can do that, okay? But to answer your question, I would probably see if chronic viruses are active in you, causing part of the problem, I would measure a nagalase level. You can order the test kit up through a lab out in New Jersey called Health Diagnostics, okay? That's the name of the company that does that. Excuse me just a minute, I just get here. Okay, so the lab is Health Diagnostics, all right? Now, I want to go through with you a few things that you ought to consider, though, besides just viruses that could be holding you back, okay? So I'm going to do a screen share here. Going back over to the Treat Lyme book here, and I wanted to look at, see if I have this in the test chapter here. Yeah. So regarding viruses and testing, take a look at the article I have called Kills Viruses, a Brief Guide. And in here, I talk about antibody testing and I talk about the nagalase test that I was just talking with you about, okay? Generally, my approach has not been to do the PCR testing. And then in this article, I also describe the various ways that you might go about treating those chronic viruses, okay? All right, the other thing, though, that you ought to take a look at is a chapter that I have put together called Can't Get Better, Do This. These are the things to start looking at when you aren't getting better. Make sure you're doing all things to address various kinds of detoxification, biofilm treatments, treating chronic virus infections, fix dysfunctional mitochondria. Look to see if you have co-infections, look at autoimmune problems, and treat for chronic yeast, okay? So where do you start? Well, take a look at this article here that I have called Treatment Stuck. Try these steps, okay? And it's the whole, I just lead you through the various steps to start working through. Are a number of things that could hold you back, okay? All right. All right, let me go back here. All right, thank you, Craig. And good luck to you. Yeah, I can get some reason my menu option is not working well here tonight. In terms, I'm trying to click things to get them to go away and to show up for you. And if you notice, I keep getting stuck looking over on the right-hand side of my screen. It's because I'm having a hard time getting it to operate correctly. All right. Hello, Lori. Let's see. Good to see you here again. I've noticed you've been showing up here lately. I hope that I didn't see you for a while. I hope that doesn't mean that your Lyme is getting more active again. But if so, I hope we can find some ways to help you here too. In terms of the Mariva, everyone, Mariva is liposomal curcumin, meaning it's microscopically wrapped in fat to help increase its absorption. And Thorne, the manufacturer, makes two Mariva products. One is Mariva 500, and the other is Mariva SR. The difference is the Mariva SR is a 250 milligram pill, and the Mariva 500 is a 500 milligram pill. They're the same thing. It's just they put more milligrams in one pill. Okay, so yes, it is as good. Thank you for that question. All right, let's see. Let's see here. Let me see, Jackie, I'm reading through a question from Jackie where part 1 did not show up, but part 2 did, but I'm trying to see if part 1 is going to give me enough to be able to even answer. Well, I'll post this. I don't know if I'm going to give you the best response here, Jackie, but I'll put it up here. All right, see. Oops. Try that again. Well, well, my thing is not working here. Let me see if that works this time. There it is. Voila. All right. Should be on the screen. Oh, for those of you that are watching the recording, you may wonder why I keep waiting for these questions. They do. They don't show up in the recorded version. I should let you know that. Okay. All right. So let's see. Something about a Lyme seminar. The doctor showed a large list of about 2,000 foods that people with Lyme should avoid. All of my severe allergies are listed being vegan. It is difficult to avoid some. Why do we need to avoid these foods? Why are they bad for? Okay, so I don't know. I don't subscribe to the idea that any one diet is right for everyone. Okay, in terms of things that people can be allergic to, yes, the two big ones would be wheat and gluten. And well, actually, I have people avoid gluten because in addition to a lot of people having inflammatory allergies to gluten, gluten leads to inflammation, okay? So I usually do recommend that people get off gluten. And I also usually recommend that people do a trial of coming off of dairy. Beyond that, I usually don't recommend stopping many foods. There are some things that I think are good to do diet-wise. I can't make much more comment without seeing the list. The big thing I would say is actually just avoid gluten, okay? That would be a good one right there. All right, sorry, it could be better for you on that one, Jackie. Good luck. Let's see here. All right. Hello, Crystal. Thank you for your question. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Have you heard of a supplement called Quintessence? And do you know if it's effective for Bartonella? So Quintessence is, there are a variety of different ones, and they work homeopathically or energetically. And I actually don't find them that helpful here. So to be honest with you, I don't find it to be a big game changer. All right? All right. Good luck to you. Well, there we go. All right. Maybe. There we are. Let's see. Hi, Sarah. Let's see. Thanks so much for your accessibility through these webinars. You're welcome. I've been on Biaxin with no problem for Lyme. I added grapefruit seed extract capsules in order to hit the spirochete from all angles. I feel sore and sting all over when I add the grapefruit seed extract. Why would this be? Okay, so first of all, grapefruit seed extract is treating the cyst form of Lyme versus there are two other forms. There's the spirochete form that you talk about, and there's also something called the intracellular variety, okay? Now, grapefruit seed extract, because it kills cysts, can trigger Hirschheimer reaction, where the immune system sees dead bug parts and makes more cytokines, okay? But stingy is usually not a side effect. It's not usually what a Herx reaction would look like, which makes me wonder if what you're actually having is more of a side effect to the grapefruit seed extract, unfortunately. So those are my thoughts on that, okay? All right, good luck to you, Sarah. Let's see. Hi, Jan. Let's see. Hi, and thanks again for your webinar. You're welcome. I have tried curcumin and turmeric force and gotten diarrhea. Is there an alternative? Thanks. Yeah, Jan, what I would do when I have patients that are not able to tolerate turmeric or curcumin, I would use the herb quercetin instead, okay? That's Quercetin. Quercetin is a bioflavonoid. It comes from the skin of colorful fruits and vegetables. And it does a number of things. Number one, it stabilizes a group of allergy cells in our body called mast cells where histamines are made. So we use it often to help people with allergies, okay? But the other thing it does is it is a kinase inhibitor. It blocks enzymes called kinase, and kinases are used to make cytokines, cytokines, okay? So anyhow, it can be used as a good cytokine blocker. And in fact, it used to be what I would use before I discovered curcumin, all right? So it can work quite well. I usually recommend people take a 250 milligram pill and to take it as 2 pills 3 times a day. So I would look at doing that. We have a good thorn product at our site if you want to take a look at that. But quercetin, you want to have it as 250 milligrams, 2 pills, 3 times a day. All right? Good luck to you. Hello, Mary. Let's see. I'm trying to get your question to post up here. There it is. Had Lyme when pregnant and didn't know until after. Gave friend 10 ounces of frozen breast milk. What are the risks likelihood of transmission to my friend's child? So Mary, we know that it can be in breast milk, but we do not know the risk. What I can tell you from practical experience is that I think it can be transmitted, but it is extremely low. Like, and I don't know, probably less than 1 or 2%. But it wouldn't be something I would keep sharing. I'll put it that way, okay? But most likely, the odds are that there isn't a problem here. All right? Okay. Good luck to you. I just erased a question about MTHFR. So MTHFR, whoever wrote that question, I have a whole article about MTHFR, okay? MTHFR stands for methotetrahydrofolate reductase. Don't try to say that too fast. And it's an enzyme that is involved in detoxification. So to explain what it is, and they have a whole article I can show you where it is in a minute. So MTHFR, so the master detox chemical that is used in our body is something called glutathione. It's a downstream product, okay? It's what the liver uses to clean toxins out, all right? It's the big thing the liver uses, all right? Many chemical reactions upstream, way up here, we need to be able to take folate from our diet, and we need to be able to activate it. And the enzyme that activates folate into activated folate so that we can get glutathione down here is called methyltetrahydrofolate reductase, okay? It activates folate. Now, you can have genetic defects of that enzyme. And if you do, downstream, if you do have defects, you're not going to get adequate conversion of diet folate into activated folate. And therefore, downstream, you're not going to get enough glutathione, okay? In addition, though, a lot of these smaller reactions that get to glutathione are also detoxifying reactions. And you have some impairment of some of the more minor detoxification reactions as well, too. It is something that can help some people with Lyme. It is not the game breaker. I know that we're starting to see a lot of discussion out on the boards about this being the thing that will change it for Lyme. That's not what I see. What I do see, though, is that if you happen to have you tend to be a person that has a lot of medicine sensitivities, okay? The way to find out if you have MTHFR is to go to a website called geneticgenie.org. That's genetic, G-E-N-E-T-I-C, genie, G-E-N-I-E.org. When you get to the home page, click on the link to order up your 23andMe genetic testing kit. Once you get the results back, go back to Genetic Genie and click on the homepage on the methylation link, and you can use the data from 23andMe to then do an analysis to see if you happen to have an MTHFR problem, okay? So if you want to know more about MTHFR, because I really just covered it briefly there, I didn't do justice to covering it. What you want is look at our Treat Lyme book and the chapter on detoxification, and then go to the article on MTHFR detoxification, a Lyme bite, okay? So in here is a whole video with more detail than what I just said, and the explanation of how you test for it and what do you do about it, okay? All right, so let me go back here. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. That question I got rid of without meaning to. All right, let me go on here. All right, hello Diane, let's see. I tested positive for IgG Lyme via IGeneX and anaplasma positive. Been rifing 2.5 years. Tick bite in 2006, on antibiotics 5 years, 2006 to 10, GI issues, gas, distension, thoughts, thanks. I guess I'm not sure what your question is. There's a lot, there's a lot about this. Diane, I would need more direction. If you're wanting some help with some certain issues, you might want to even try one of my one-to-one consults on that to see if I can give you some ideas on that, okay? I showed people that earlier tonight. You would go to our treatlyme.net site, and on the left-hand side, there's a link that you can click that says one-to-one consult, okay? And that would be a way to figure out, you can ask me more detail through one of those about what your question actually is, all right? But unfortunately, I can't tell from your question here what I'm supposed to be answering. All right, good luck to you. And thank you for that question. I'm sorry I can't help you. All right. You guys have got more than I can answer here tonight. Let me just I'm going to do a quick answer here, and I think this may be my last question here. Let's see. Hi, Jeff. Let's see. Next step my ID doctor wants is a spinal tap, question mark. Oh, wait a minute, I think there was this first part of that. So Jeff, I'm going to post both parts to your question here. So here's part one, and I'm posting this so everyone can see part one. Well, that's if my thing will work. Okay, this is from Jeff. Hi, thanks. I've been on Doxy twice, tested positive 2 times since July 11th. I have trouble keeping my mind clear. My eyes hurt and are swollen. Can you help? And then I think the second part of that question was, next up, my ID doctor wants is a spinal tap. Okay, so first of all, your ID doctor is trying to see if you have Lyme. He can confirm that you have Lyme in your spinal fluid, which would mean the fluid around the brain. What I can tell you is you have Lyme in your spinal fluid and the fluid around your brain. And the reason I can tell you that is if you've tested positive for Lyme, there's studies that show that when you have a Lyme infection in you, that by 2 weeks after you've actually had Lyme in you, it's already crossed into the brain. So anyone with Lyme has it in the brain, okay? The issue is whether it's causing significant problems, okay? Now, if the doctor does do a spinal tap, what will come up is about 50% of the time that somebody has Lyme, it will show up in the spinal fluid. 50% of the time it doesn't. I think it's a worthless test. I think we can assume if you've tested in your blood for Lyme and you have bad thinking, you still have neurologically active Lyme. And you need to develop a comprehensive Lyme treatment, all right? So, and the way to do that would be, if I could give you the best advice, it would be set up a consult with me. I'd be glad to go ahead and help you do that. One of my online consults. Short of doing that, take a look at our successful treatment recipe, the Lyme disease treatment guideline that I wrote. That will give you great ideas on how to treat Lyme as well too. But I'd love to help you look at a more thorough way of doing that as well too. And to do that, you might look at the one-to-one medical consult that I talked about. Okay, all right. So everyone, that's it for me tonight. That's 6:30 already. And I've got to get my dogs home. They're bouncing around all over the place here. It's time to go walked. So for those of you that, so I'm glad that everyone was here tonight. I will be sending out an email tomorrow that will have a link to the webinar. All right, here, I'm sorry, to the webinar recording and also to sign up for the next week's. You can sign up for next week's webinar already. And the way you can do that is in a second here, I'm going to take you over to our Treat Lyme site. So you'll land in the Treat Lyme book. You can use the left-hand navigation menu, though, to click on the webinars to sign up for the next one. The other thing is finding benefit from our webinars, and if you use, I would ask and hope that you might subscribe to the Treat Lyme book, where we have all that information that you can get without even waiting to take the time to sit in on our webinars, okay? And check out the Treat Lyme book. If you'd subscribe, I'd appreciate it. It helps support the work that we're doing here to keep spreading the word and help support these webinars as well too, all right? So I'm gonna take you there right now, and next week I hope to see all of you back again. Good night, everyone.